Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Anime Octopus. Today's topic delves into a compelling and imaginative scenario. What if Naruko had been trained by Madara Uchiha? This alternate universe exploration will examine how Naruko's development, mindset, and power dynamics could have been dramatically altered under the influence of one of the most formidable shinobi in the Naruto universe. Prepare for an in-depth analysis that blends character theory, lore interpretation, and creative speculation. Disclaimer: the content presented on this channel is intended solely for entertainment and discussion purposes. I do not claim ownership of any anime footage featured in this video. All rights and credits belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. Let's begin. Naruko Uzumaki was a bright and clever girl. It was something she recognized because people often reminded her of it, especially Tsukimi, the kind matron at the orphanage. Tsukimi had silver hair and thoughtful lines on her face that deepened when she smiled. When Naruko once asked about them, Tsukimi explained that those were signs people carried as they grew older. Tsukimi was different from other adults. She was gentle and often handed out sweets to the children when they behaved well. Putting all the little ones to bed could be challenging, and Naruko noticed how patient Tsukimi remained despite that. Not all grown-ups were like Tsukimi, though. There was one elderly man everyone respectfully called Hokage-sama, even though he no longer held that title. He occasionally visited the orphanage to check on the older kids who had become Jonin. Naruko thought he seemed kind enough, but he always looked at her with a strange expression, gentle but distant. He once told her he had been friends with her parents, yet avoided mentioning their names no matter how politely she asked. Naruko didn't dwell on it too much. If the old man couldn't share anything meaningful, then she wouldn't press further. Since the retired Hokage didn't provide much help, and the Jonin children often ignored her, Naruko took matters into her own hands. She started looking through the orphanage's old, forgotten books, hoping to discover anything useful. Eventually, she found a torn-up textbook discarded by a former academy student. Flipping through the pages that were still intact, she came across something called the leaf-sticking exercise. It fascinated her. The concept of chakra control was clearly important for becoming a shinobi, and Naruko was determined to pursue that path. Her reason was quite personal. One day, while Tsukimi Bakan's attention was turned elsewhere, an older boy grabbed a small locket from a girl about Naruko's age. The girl burst into tears, pleading for it back, saying it was the only thing she had with pictures of her parents. Naruko hadn't realized how strongly she could feel, but something inside her pushed her forward. She confronted the boy and mimicked the training dummy she'd seen the Jonin use, swiftly retrieving the locket with a determined fist and a glare. The boy, surprised, retreated while crying even louder than the girl. Naruko returned the locket and was enveloped in a heartfelt hug. It felt so wonderful that the scolding she received later seemed completely insignificant. That was the moment Naruko decided to become a shinobi, not just because of the thrill of standing up for someone, but also for the joy of protecting those who needed it. But to begin her training, she needed permission to go out. Tsukimi Bakan? Naruko looked up at the matron with her wide, eager eyes. Tsukimi seemed to be in a good mood that day. Yes, Naruko-chan? She responded with her usual warm smile. Can I go outside to the trees? Naruko asked, trying to keep her excitement subtle. Tsukimi sighed gently, though her smile never faded, something Naruko never quite understood. You may, Naruko-chan, but only if you promise me one thing. What is it? Naruko tilted her head curiously. Be back before sunset, all right? Otherwise, I'll need to send someone to come bring you back, Tsukimi said with a gentle but serious look. I promise. Naruko nodded with determination. Before leaving, Tsukimi gave her a quick ruffle on the head, and Naruko couldn't hide her beaming grin. She finally had the chance to train like a true shinobi. Hatake Kakashi was a skilled but tired shinobi. Though young, he carried the weariness of someone who had seen and endured far too much. People often told him to take time off and rest, but he never quite listened. After a difficult period in the past, Kakashi had lost many close to him. Friends, mentors, and people he had cared for deeply. He didn't often talk about those times. Instead, he remained focused on his duties, keeping himself in motion because routine gave him stability. Wake up, complete the mission, return, and rest. Rinse and repeat. When Lady Tsunade became the fifth Hokage, he remembered the commotion it caused. But in the end, she accepted the responsibility, and Kakashi had grown to respect her leadership. Her bold response to a foreign village's attempt to intimidate Konoha proved she was both courageous and principled. She protected her people and made it clear that peace could not be taken for granted. Kakashi admired her more than he let on. He especially appreciated how her decisions preserved unity within Konoha, ensuring families stayed whole and children like the young heiress of the Hyuga clan could grow up surrounded by loved ones. That kind of peace mattered to him. He noticed that Tsunagakure, their recent ally, seemed to appreciate Lady Tsunade as well. A particularly grand gesture came in the form of an ornate gift, a beautiful jug of rare sake from the Kazekage. It was a quiet, respectful show of alliance. It had been 5 years since the incident that shook the village, and while things hadn't worsened, they hadn't drastically improved either for Kakashi. Life was steady, but not fulfilling. He still served in the elite unit of Onbu, holding the rank of captain, a position granted to him by his late mentor. Day after day, the pattern remained unchanged. Sometimes, Kakashi wondered what life outside of missions might be like. He occasionally noticed women and pondered the idea of starting a family someday, but he had never been the type to pursue such things with confidence. Still, today he remained focused on his current patrol, letting thoughts drift only momentarily. As he wandered near the riverside park, he caught sight of a child, a girl, with spiky blonde hair and determined eyes. She carried a tattered book under one arm and a water bottle in the other. Something about her struck a deep chord within him. Kakashi's instincts were sharp, and as he observed her from a distance, he noticed something familiar, not just in appearance, but in presence. Her chakra signature was unmistakable. He froze. This girl, so vibrant and spirited, carried something of both her parents within her. Naruko Uzumaki. Kakashi knew who she was instantly, not by sight alone, but because the feeling she gave off was so achingly familiar. She didn't resemble her parents exactly, but something deeper confirmed her identity. She was meant to be family. He imagined what life might have been like if things had gone differently. Kakashi, the protective older sibling, Minato, the wise and patient father, Kushina, the spirited and loving mother. His heart ached at the thought. For so long, he had believed that Naruko had been lost. That's what the former Hokage had told him. But now, she stood right there. And Kakashi quietly resolved, he would be there. Watching. Supporting. Even if from afar for now. He wouldn't let her feel alone, not anymore. Uchiha Madara had lived a long, long time, far beyond what anyone believed possible. It was something he understood and accepted. His time was limited, yet he had seen more of the world than most ever would. After the legendary battle at the Valley of the End and the deception that followed, Madara spent decades working with the unique chakra of his former rival, Hashirama. He wasn't idle, though. During those years, he wandered the world, trying to recall why he had once dreamt of bringing peace to the war-torn lands. And finally, the answer came to him, not through power or ambition, but through a kind-hearted, spirited woman with bright red hair, and later, the strong-willed child they raised together. Fatherhood changed him. He had once believed peace could only be created by force. But now, looking into the eyes of his daughter, he saw a different kind of strength. He worried for her safety, knowing that being born with Uchiha heritage came with risks. To protect her, and with his wife Haruka's guidance, he created a protective seal that would keep the child's Uchiha powers dormant until the time was right. Thus, Uchiha Kushina became known as Uzumaki Kushina, her hair turning as red as her mother's, and her eyes a vivid violet. Her chakra remained remarkably powerful, so much so that the village of Konoha deemed her a potential new guardian for the Nine Tails. Madara wasn't thrilled with the decision, but he believed Kushina would be protected within the village, and that was enough. Time passed. Madara was already elderly when Kushina was born, and Haruka's health was beginning to fade. After Kushina left home, Haruka sent her a message, saying that Madara had passed peacefully in his sleep. She left out his true identity, simply marking his resting place as Uzumaki Izuna, a name Madara chose in quiet tribute to his brother. As he grew older, Madara once again felt the disappointment and sadness that came with witnessing the world's endless struggles. In every corner, smaller nations suffered, families were torn apart, and conflicts brewed. Even in peacetime, the world seemed to waver under the weight of its past mistakes. Eventually, Haruka's health gave way, and Madara found new motivation to set his final plan in motion. By then, he had awakened the Rinnegan and began carefully preparing a new path forward, one that would bypass the old cycles of conflict. He placed the eyes in an Uzumaki orphan whose vitality could sustain them, all while watching the world through the eyes of his trusted allies. Time passed. And then, something changed. Kushina was gone. And with her, her husband. But more than that, she had left behind a child. Madara learned that, in her final moments, Kushina had done something truly remarkable. With the last of her strength, she used an advanced time-space technique to send the Nine Tails far away, ensuring that her newborn daughter, Naruko, would not be burdened with the creature's power or the village's expectations. Kushina had given her all to make sure her child would grow up free. Madara respected that deeply. He could see now that his daughter had inherited more than just chakra, she had inherited will. And now, that will lived on in Naruko. Minato, Kushina's husband, had also passed due to overwhelming chakra strain. Madara held no resentment toward him but believed that Naruko deserved a path shaped by freedom, not expectations. He feared Konoha would have raised her to put the village above all else, never questioning, always sacrificing. That wasn't the future Madara envisioned for his granddaughter. So now, even in his twilight years, Madara found a new purpose. He would guide Naruko. He would teach her, protect her, and help her grow, not into a weapon, but into someone strong enough to choose her own future. Spiky black hair with a soft blue hue? Check. Clear, dark eyes and a vibrant presence? Check. A chakra so powerful it pulsed like a second heartbeat? Absolutely. This was his granddaughter. She sat quietly beneath a large tree near the Naka River's artificial extension, focusing on her chakra control with a leaf resting on her forehead. The secluded nature of the place told Madara she valued peace and focus, rare traits in someone so young. The sight filled him with quiet pride. She looked just like him when he was young. And her chakra? For a 5-year-old, it was incredible. A clear result of her Uzumaki lineage combining with the Uchiha blood in her veins. Madara approached with care, brushing against a bush to catch her attention. "Hello, child," he greeted warmly, voice soft despite his years. Naruko blinked up at him with curious eyes. "Hello," she replied, wary but polite. "I saw you practicing chakra control. Are you hoping to become a shinobi someday?" he asked. "Yeah." She smiled. "I can stick a leaf to my forehead now." "Impressive. That takes patience and focus. How long did it take you?" "I'm not sure," she shrugged, "but I've been here since morning. I think I got it now." "How did you learn the exercise?" Madara asked. "I found it in an old book at the orphanage," she said proudly. "But the rest of it was damaged, so I don't know what comes next." "I see," Madara said thoughtfully. "You must be a fast reader." "I am. Tsukimi Bakken lets me leave early because the other kids are still learning." He smiled. "Would you like to learn something new?" "Like what?" Naruko stepped closer, curiosity bubbling. "Chakra control techniques. I was a shinobi too, long ago. I could teach you a new exercise." "Really?" she asked, eyes wide. "How about this? If you can master the tree climbing exercise before sunset, I'll return tomorrow to teach you your first ninjutsu." She lit up with excitement. Madara carefully explained the tree walking technique and gave a demonstration. Naruko listened intently, then asked, "Hey, Ji-san, what's your name?" "It's polite to share your name first," he replied gently. "I'm Uzumaki Naruko." He smiled, deeply and genuinely. "Nice to meet you, Naruko. You may call me Madara. Now go ahead, the sun won't wait." Naruko ran at the tree and made a few steps before slipping. She fell gently onto the grass, puffing out her cheeks in frustration. Madara chuckled softly. She was trying hard. He respected that. Over the next hour, Madara watched as Naruko climbed higher with every attempt. She learned quickly, adapted, and refused to give up. She was more than just Uchiha or Uzumaki, she was something new, something powerful. "I did it," she shouted, jumping down from the tree with a triumphant smile. "I got to the top. You said you'd teach me ninjutsu." "I said I'd teach you tomorrow," he said with a soft chuckle. "It's almost evening, Naruko." Her expression turned a little downcast, but she nodded. "I should go back." "Good night, Naruko. Come early tomorrow," he said, his voice full of warmth. She turned to go but paused as he called her name once more. "Don't tell anyone about me. Not even someone you trust." She nodded seriously, sensing the weight of his words, then gave him a final wave and ran off. Madara smiled to himself. That child. She had determination, kindness, and strength. Everything the world needed. Everything worth protecting. As stars began to twinkle in the evening sky, Madara disappeared into a secret path he once built in the village wall, leading to an untouched underground chamber. He sat on a dusty wooden seat, his eyes fluttering shut. For the first time in a long while, he dreamed peacefully. Naruko plopped onto her bed after enjoying a warm meal and a relaxing bath. Big day, Naruko-chan? Tsukimi teased warmly as she tucked her in. Naruko didn't reply, only responded with a soft snore as she drifted into sleep, her cheek pressed against her pillow. Meanwhile, in the Hokage's office, Hiruzen had barely a moment to react before he found himself pushed firmly against the wall by a strong hand. A masked individual with a glowing red eye stared at him intensely. This was definitely not the evening the former Hokage had anticipated. Kakashi, Hiruzen gasped in shock, his voice strained. You weren't honest with me, Kakashi said, his tone calm but edged with deep hurt. Just then, another person entered the room and gasped in surprise. Kakashi. What are you doing? Shizune cried, clearly startled. The young apprentice of Tsunade ran to his side, trying to understand the situation. You told me she was gone. So why did I find a child who unmistakably carries the presence of both Sensei and Kushina? Kakashi's voice trembled with emotion. Why did I find Naruko? Hiruzen couldn't answer, not just because of the firm grip, but because he knew that any explanation would fall short. Kakashi released his hold, and Hiruzen dropped to his knees, breathing heavily as he tried to compose himself. Kakashi. Tsunade's voice rang out sharply as she stepped into the room. What is the meaning of this? Explain yourself. You told me Naruko was gone. Kakashi burst out. But I saw her with my own eyes, by the river. She's alive. Why didn't you tell me? Tsunade's eyes widened in confusion. Wait. You thought she wasn't alive? Kakashi swallowed hard, trying to contain his overwhelming emotions. After Sensei and Kushina were no longer with us, I was told their daughter didn't survive either. That wasn't true. I should have known. I should have been responsible for her. Tsunade approached more carefully, her voice quieter. Kakashi, you need to calm down. Kakashi obeyed, but the storm behind his gaze did not subside. Tsunade turned to Hiruzen. What explanation can you give for keeping such a critical truth from one of our most trusted shinobi? The village was vulnerable, Hiruzen said quietly. Kakashi was vital. I thought. You thought wrong, Tsunade interrupted. Mental and emotional well-being are not luxuries, they're essential. You kept something deeply personal from someone who had every right to know. I can't trust your judgment anymore. She turned away, her expression a mixture of frustration and disappointment. That silent gesture hurt Hiruzen more than any reprimand. Shizune, please escort Kakashi to the waiting area, she said without turning back. Yes, Tsunade-sama. Shizune gently took Kakashi's arm and led him away. Though he followed her, his eyes still reflected quiet intensity. When they had gone, Hiruzen eased himself back into his chair, feeling the weight of years settle on his shoulders. He was no longer the protector of the village, just a retired man facing the consequences of his choices. Tsunade's words echoed in his mind. Her disappointment wasn't born of cruelty, it came from clarity. She was right, he had often prioritized the structure of the village over the hearts of those who served it. Kakashi had been carrying far too much, and he had let that go unnoticed for too long. With a heavy sigh, Hiruzen gathered his things, understanding that his time guiding others had come to an end. He hoped, at the very least, that his last pupil would remember the good more than the mistakes. Outside, Tsunade rubbed her temples as she stepped into the hallway. One issue after another. She hadn't expected Kakashi to confront Hiruzen like that. It was out of character, but understandable. Seeing Naruko again must have shaken him deeply. Naruko. Tsunade had heard the chatter from shinobi who occasionally helped out at the orphanage. Many mentioned a clever, high-spirited young girl who could mimic techniques almost instinctively. One even told a story about how she defended another child's necklace with fierce determination, a memory that still brought a faint smile to Tsunade's face. She thought back to Minato and Kushina. She hadn't known Kushina well, but Minato had been a familiar presence, especially because Jiraiya always bragged about him during visits. They were both talented and promising. And their daughter had inherited that spark. Tsunade arrived at the conference room to find Shizune sitting beside a quiet, clearly conflicted Kakashi. He had faced more than his share of challenges. Losing his father, his teammates, and then a mentor who was like family. It was no wonder he was nearing his breaking point. She thought briefly about Sakumo, Kakashi's father. He had carried his struggles alone. Tsunade feared Kakashi might follow the same path if things didn't change. With determination, she approached. All right, Kakashi, she said, standing firmly before him. Here's what's going to happen. You have 5 more years in Onbu, no more. After that, you're going to be a Jounin sensei. Kakashi looked up, shocked. What? You'll be training a Jinan team, she continued, ignoring his expression. You'll have full authority to return students to the academy if they're not ready, but once the 5 years are up, you're leaving Anbu. It's time you take a new path, one that gives back in a different way. Shizune gave Kakashi an encouraging glance. Tsunade knew he wasn't in a place to adopt a child, but guiding a Jinan team might help him heal, and in turn, help others grow. After a moment of stunned silence, Kakashi let out a slow, quiet breath. All right. Tsunade gave a small smile, feeling like the decision was the right one. We'll talk about the incident in the Hokage's office later, she added with a stern tone. You'll be required to complete an instructor training course before you're officially assigned a team. You didn't handle things well, and there will be consequences. Kakashi nodded slightly, eyes lowered. But there was a hint of peace in his posture, like maybe, just maybe, the weight on his shoulders had shifted ever so slightly. Do you even know how to use hand signs? Madara's question brought Naruko's excitement to a pause. She had been eager to dive into the new ninjutsu the elder had promised to teach, but now realized something important: she had never actually learned how to use hand signs. The elderly man sighed, muttering something under his breath about things being more complicated than they appeared, and motioned for Naruko to come closer. Here, Madara said, holding up his hands just close enough for her to see clearly. This is the Ram seal. It's the most commonly used hand sign because it is a neutral seal. It helps channel your chakra more efficiently, especially when you need to break illusions or activate a jutsu you already know. And so the lesson began. One by one, Madara demonstrated each of the 12 foundational hand signs, carefully guiding Naruko through them. She repeated each seal after him, a few adjustments here and there, and after nearly half an hour, she could confidently perform all of them, good enough to begin learning her first technique. The seals for this jutsu are tiger, ram, monkey, boar, horse, and tiger again, Madara instructed, calmly demonstrating the sequence. Then, facing the river, he took a breath and exhaled powerfully. Katen, Gokakyu no Jutsu. Naruko's eyes widened in amazement as a massive fireball lit up the sky, sending waves of heat across the water's surface. The fire's brilliance made her take a step back, stunned by the scale of the technique. I'm really going to learn that? She asked, eyes gleaming with anticipation. With a light nudge from Madara's cane, Naruko found herself stumbling forward. She clumsily attempted the sequence of signs 3 times before getting it right. Madara, now seated on a wooden bench near the river, fanned himself and watched her with quiet amusement. Despite the midday sun and lack of shade, Madara refused to move. He was determined to witness Naruko master what was considered a significant rite of passage for those connected to the Uchiha legacy, even if she didn't know what that connection was just yet. Her first attempt produced a fireball no larger than a kitten, causing her to cry out in frustration. Madara couldn't help but smile, she reminded him of himself at that age. But Naruko was determined. With the same tenacity she had shown while mastering chakra control, she practiced for hours, refining her form until her fireball reached the height of her teacher. Madara was deeply impressed, not only by how quickly she improved, but by how efficiently she used her chakra. It was rare for a child, even among the Uchiha, to grasp the technique so quickly and with such minimal drain on their energy. Most young shinobi required several days to manage the basics of the fireball jutsu, but Naruko's chakra reserves were exceptional. Her body simply hadn't caught up with the immense energy she could produce. It was vital she understood how chakra functioned, or she might never reach her full potential. By the end of the day, her fireball was more than sufficient for someone her age. Madara nodded to himself, she had mastered it. Naruko, Madara called. She hurried over, face bright with joy. I can do it now. I made the fireball. You certainly did, he replied with a calm tone, though serious in his expression. But remember, learning a jutsu also means learning responsibility. If you show off your skills carelessly, others might take advantage of your abilities. It's important to be thoughtful about when and where you use your talents. Naruko tilted her head. So if I keep my jutsu secret, I'll be harder to beat? Exactly, Madara said, nodding with a slight smile. It was just one of many subtle lessons he planned to teach her, lessons he hoped would shape her into a wise and capable kunoichi. 3 years later. Madara had come to terms with the fact that, in his current condition, there were some things he could no longer do for Naruko. She had just turned 8 and was finally old enough to attend the Shinobi Academy. She was practically bouncing with energy, though Gigi, her affectionate name for the old man, had told her to try and be composed. Tsukimi Bakken had dressed her in a neat kimono-style shirt, a pair of durable sandals, and had packed some fresh school supplies. One of the books was the same type she'd used to learn the leaf-sticking exercise. This one was new and crisp, a refreshing change from her worn old copy. The academy courtyard was filled with children her age, many standing alongside their families. Naruko noticed that several looked like miniature versions of the adults they came with. It made her chuckle quietly. Maybe she should ask Tsukimi if that was normal. "Uzumaki Naruko." A man with a scar called out. She raised her hand high and stepped forward. "Present." Several adults turned to glance at her. She felt a little shy as they whispered to one another, unsure what they were saying. It made her a bit uneasy. Inside the classroom, their teacher, Iruka-sensei, was already diving into the first lesson. "Who can tell me the two founding clans of Konohagakure no Sato?" A pink-haired girl raised her hand eagerly. "Your name, please?" Iruka asked politely. "Haruno Sakura." She replied brightly. "The Senju clan and the Uchiha clan." "Very good, Sakura-chan. Now, who can tell me the names of the leaders of those clans?" A loud voice blurted out an answer from the back. Naruko turned but didn't recognize the speaker. Iruka ignored the interruption and waited for someone to raise their hand. Naruko did. "Name?" Iruka asked. "Uzumaki Naruko," she said proudly. "Senju Hashirama was the leader of the Senju clan." "Correct. Please take a seat." A boy in the front row, who hadn't spoken yet, raised his hand and confidently said, "Uchiha Sasuke." The other leader was Uchiha Madara. That name again. Madara. Naruko couldn't stop thinking about it. She didn't see the elder Madara for nearly a week. "I waited for you. But you didn't show up," she said with a small pout. "You were being watched last week," Madara replied calmly. "Watched?" Naruko's eyes widened. "Yes. I stayed hidden because some of the other children followed you here. I needed to remain unseen." Naruko looked down, ashamed. "Sorry. I didn't know." Madara shook his head. "You need to start practicing taijutsu. I can guide you, but I can't physically train you like before. That's not something I can help with anymore." Naruko hesitated. "But you could have trained them too." "I chose to teach you for a reason," he said. "Why?" she asked, the question hanging heavily in the air. Madara smiled. "We're connected. I want you to find out why. Konoha keeps detailed records, you have my name, and your own. Start there." She stayed quiet, but her curiosity only grew. "I have knowledge that could be used against you," Madara continued. "That's why I must remain hidden. When you're ready, ask me anything. I will answer." After a moment, he added, "Until then, you'll have to deal with my annoying teaching style." Despite his weakness, Madara felt hopeful. Konoha had resources, mentors, and peers who could guide Naruko in the modern world, while he could focus on teaching her skills that others might overlook. He couldn't shape every part of her journey, but he could plant the seeds of wisdom that would bloom in time. "I'll give you one hint," Madara said. "What is it?" she asked instantly. "I'm training you for the same reason your classmates are trained early." "That's it?" "That's all you're getting for now," he replied with a playful smirk. Naruko didn't press further, but her thoughtful gaze lingered. One day, Madara's breathing was especially labored. "Tell me what you learned today," he rasped. "Iruka-sensei and Mizuki-sensei showed us how to throw kunai. We can't keep them yet, but Iruka-sensei said I was really good for a beginner." Madara smiled faintly, pleased by her progress. Later that week, Naruko sat with Tsukimi Bakken, watching the clouds. "Are you going to get better soon?" she asked softly. Tsukimi gave her a warm smile. "My dear, sometimes people get older, and their bodies grow tired. But I've lived a full life, and I'm grateful." Naruko's eyes lowered. "Do you have family?" "Yes," Tsukimi replied, her eyes glinting with fondness. "My family is beautiful. I miss them, but I'm proud of all they've become." Naruko hugged her knees. "What's it like to have a family?" Tsukimi's smile deepened. "Family is the most wonderful thing. They're the people who love you unconditionally. One day, you'll have your own, and you'll understand just how special that bond is. You'll protect them and cheer for them, and they'll do the same for you." She shared a few stories, funny, heartwarming ones that made Naruko laugh, and in doing so, she left a lasting impression. Family is wonderful. And someday, Naruko would carry that truth with her wherever she went. Naruko's journey, a legacy awakens. Naruko and the other children at the orphanage weren't woken up by Tsukimi the next morning. Noticing the unusual silence, Naruko felt a quiet sense of responsibility. She decided someone needed to know something was wrong. Her first and only stop was the Hokage's office. She didn't go to the academy at all that week. Tsukimi Bakan isn't here anymore. I don't know what I should do now, Naruko said, eyes glossy and voice wavering. Shizune knelt down and gently pulled the girl into a warm, comforting hug. Don't worry, sweetheart. Everything's going to be okay. Naruko was given her own small apartment, a rare opportunity among the orphans. A caretaker visited weekly to check in, bring frozen meals, and teach her how to cook and clean. Unlike many of the others, Naruko was not placed into foster care after the situation changed so suddenly. And deep down, she felt she knew why. That moment marked a turning point for her, an emotional experience she would always remember. A bond of blood and power. Gigi. Are you my grandfather? Yes, Naruko. I am. Her single Tomoe Sharingan met Madara's 3 Tomoe in quiet acknowledgement. Their training barely changed, except for the intensity. Madara now taught with full dedication. It's true that having smaller chakra reserves makes control easier at first, he admitted after hearing what the academy instructors had told Naruko. But easy isn't always best. Some chakra control techniques can't be learned unless you possess large reserves. People not born with that potential, like you and me, could never reach the highest levels of chakra mastery. Why can we learn it when others can't? Naruko asked thoughtfully. Madara had known he would need to explain what made them different eventually, but he hadn't expected her to understand so quickly. I'll explain this only once. You must never share what I'm about to tell you until you are strong enough that it no longer matters. Do you understand? Naruko nodded, her Sharingan reading his lips to remember his words perfectly. Good, Madara said, leaning back in his wooden chair. Let me tell you the history of the Uchiha, Senju, and the ties that bind them to you. The story lasted almost 2 hours. Naruko sat, completely focused. She learned about the origin of the Uchiha clan, their connection to the Uzumaki and Senju, and how she was different. Somewhere in the middle, Madara offered an awkward explanation about family lineages and genetics, which made Naruko visibly uncomfortable. She regretted asking, but she kept listening. Your mother, though she never showed it outwardly, carried my genetic traits. That's why you resemble me more than your parents. But why aren't they here? Naruko asked, her voice quiet. If they were strong, why didn't they stay? Madara was silent for a moment, resting his hands on the head of his cane. It was because of me, he said at last, voice even. My dream for peace led others to adopt it in ways I did not anticipate. He told her about the Tsuki no Mi plan, an idea to bring the world into a dreamlike harmony using genjutsu, where every person would live in their own perfect world. To realize it, immense power was needed, a combination of unique chakra types and a strong connection to certain ancient lineages. I couldn't complete the plan, so I entrusted it to someone else. But what happened to my parents? Naruko asked again, trying to understand. Madara's aging eyes softened. My apprentice targeted your mother at her most vulnerable. The moment she brought you into the world, her protective energy weakened. It was used against her. If she had received help right away, perhaps things would have turned out differently. But everything happened too fast. Her strength and love allowed her to protect you in the end. Naruko's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to scream, but stayed silent. From this day forward, Madara continued, you can always trust that I will do everything in my power to protect you. How am I supposed to believe you? Naruko stood, fists clenched in frustration. It's like you were part of the reason they're gone. I have never shown you hostility. I've only tried to help you grow, he said calmly. Listen to me before you decide how to feel. I wasn't going to do anything, Naruko stammered, realizing she didn't know how to respond. Madara exhaled. He then explained the final moments of her parents. Her father had prepared to protect her at any cost. Her mother, with what little energy remained, made a choice that would ensure Naruko's safety, choosing a peaceful life for her daughter, even if it meant being misunderstood by others. They were both heroes in their own way, Madara finished gently. A vow to grow stronger. Naruko thought for several long minutes, processing everything. Ji-san, she said quietly, catching his attention, train me to become the strongest. Because I'll have a family someday too. I won't ever let them suffer. Training under a legend. Weeks passed. Madara, now fully invested in her growth, began teaching her all he could. Sharingan mastery, chakra control, and the art of genjutsu were just the beginning. During taijutsu drills, Madara lectured from his seat as Naruko trained with determination. In the old days, taijutsu wasn't just a fighting style, it was everything. Speed, strength, agility. The foundation of battle. Today, many over-rely on ninjutsu and genjutsu. But physical skills conserve chakra and sharpen your instincts. Naruko, breathless from a set of pull-ups, asked, "So why is it still so important if we've got jutsu now?" Because taijutsu builds discipline. And because if you rely too much on any one thing, what will you do when it fails you? Naruko nodded, understanding. No skill should be a crutch. Exactly. You must be adaptable. Only then will you thrive. Later, Madara handed her a small book titled Bingo Book, Land of Fire South. Choose your mission wisely, he advised. Face real challenges when you're ready. Experience is the greatest teacher. Reflections on history. One day, during rest, Naruko asked, "Can someone's chakra be taken away forever?" "It's possible," Madara replied. "But chakra is part of who we are. Removing it could end life itself. It's not a weakness, it's a warning. Our strength must be protected." They discuss legends of the Sage of Six Paths, Ninshu, and how stories evolve. Naruko listened carefully, piecing together how history and power were linked, not always by kindness, but by ambition, misunderstanding, and legacy. The world changed because people forgot why peace mattered, Naruko concluded. "And now it's your turn," Madara said, pride shining in his eyes. "To remember, and to shape the world as it should be." Legacy of the Flame, the tale of Uchiha Naruko. "They brought it upon themselves," Madara said with calm finality. "How harsh, grandfather." Naruko frowned. "Don't you love them the way you care about me?" Madara didn't so much as roll his eyes, but his grandson's, now granddaughter's, tone was unmistakably pointed. Naruko already knew what her grandfather thought of those who had turned their backs on the clan. "There was only one person left. Sasuke's in my class. His older sibling was the one responsible." Weak resolve. He should have been more careful. "Grandpa," Naruko gasped. "That's not kind." Madara went into another long lecture, his tone thoughtful. "The fact that even one person remained means there may be more going on. I don't believe a single individual could bring down a powerful clan alone. There may be other elements at play. Perhaps my old apprentice still walks among us." Naruko narrowed her eyes, focusing. Madara smiled knowingly. It wasn't difficult to spark determination in his clever and driven granddaughter. "What would you do if I were to be gone tomorrow?" he asked curiously. "Laugh first or later?" Naruko smirked in mock dryness. Madara's brow twitched. Her wit was sharp, just like her mother's had been. With a swift but harmless swat from his cane, he lightly tapped her on the head. "Ow! You mischievous fox. What happened to the little girl who used to beg for jutsu before bed?" "She figured out she was going to learn them either way." Naruko stuck out her tongue. "Too bad you're still not strong enough to use them all yet," Madara teased, feigning disappointment. "You'd pass out trying one at your age, old man. Children these days. All sass, no patience. Old people. All grumbles, no filters." Another gentle tap from Madara's cane made her yelp. All right. Under the quiet moonlight, 9-year-old Uchiha Naruko moved gracefully through the forest, cloaked by wind and shadow. This was her final test. Her grandfather always said that to thrive as a shinobi, no matter your bloodline, you must be prepared to protect yourself and others with skill, precision, and heart. Naruko had spent the week tracking a group of rogue shinobi who had been disturbing the nearby towns of the Land of Waves. A short sword was strapped to her waist, smart for someone her size who needed a way to keep distance from taller adversaries. She extended her chakra sensing ability and located her targets, 13 distinct signatures. Good. They weren't far. Her Sharingan activated, the 3 tomoe in each eye glowing faintly in the dark. When she reached their campsite, her eyes caught what her senses had missed, 4 women and a child locked in a caged area. They looked frightened, though unharmed. "Don't worry now, sweethearts," a ragged man sneered, stepping toward the cage. "We'll take good care of you." Before he could say more, a kunai struck a tree behind him, startling the camp into silence. Naruko emerged from the shadows, swiftly and skillfully knocking the man unconscious before he could react. There's someone here. A panicked voice called. It's just a kid. That child just took down our captain. Get her. The remaining bandits drew their weapons. One rushed in, swinging carelessly. Naruko deflected him with a kunai, disabling his weapon hand cleanly and sending him sprawling to the ground. The others approached more cautiously. But Naruko was composed. She blocked, dodged, and countered with agility. One attacker lost grip on his sword as she struck it away, and she swiftly disarmed him. Two more lunged, but Naruko's Sharingan caught their movements before they even began. With calm focus, she used a genjutsu to halt them in their tracks, both collapsing peacefully to the ground in a state of unconscious trance. She turned her gaze toward the last rogue, who dropped his weapon and surrendered, overwhelmed. Rather than finish the fight harshly, Naruko sealed the remaining energy of the bandits into a chakra scroll and gently freed the caged group. With kindness, she led the women and child to the nearest village, making sure they were safe and offered kind words of comfort. Upon returning, she handed in evidence of the mission and received a fair reward, which she sealed into another scroll. They were causing a lot of problems, Grandpa, she said solemnly. I'm glad I was able to help those people. Madara nodded, observing her carefully. Did you face any complications? Nothing I didn't expect, Naruko replied, digging into the warm meal her grandfather had prepared. And how did the confrontation feel? Naruko paused mid-bite, then answered slowly. It was intense. But I felt focused. Like I was in full control. Madara reached out and gently ruffled her dark hair. You've now felt what real battle requires. But there will be stronger, faster foes. This is only the beginning. Do you understand a little more about what it means to grow stronger? Naruko nodded earnestly. She knew now, what had seemed like an easy win could have gone differently if her enemies had been more alert. She understood the gap between her strength and Madara's, and it only made her more determined. At 11 years old, Naruko's training continued with relentless focus. Her shoulder-length, spiky black hair now resembled her grandfather's. She skipped most academy classes, having long outpaced the curriculum. Madara taught her strategy, the history of shinobi, elemental releases, and physical combat styles. From genjutsu to advanced chakra control, he ensured she had the foundation to grow beyond even his own strength. He also introduced her to medical ninjutsu, just enough to ensure she could recover from minor injuries, and fuinjutsu, which fascinated her. Naruko didn't want to be caught off guard by dangerous seals in the future. The academy, while structured, offered little to someone like her. Eventually, she requested a formal meeting with the Hokage to discuss stepping away from standard education. Tsunade agreed, as long as Naruko attended half the year to keep up with basic education and team collaboration skills. It was a fair deal. With 6 months of freedom to train every year, Naruko poured everything into improving herself. On a quiet afternoon, Naruko approached the secret hideout her grandfather had built. Something felt off. She extended her senses. Her grandfather's presence, usually steady, even if faint, wasn't there. She frowned. Gigi? She called softly, stepping inside. The silence deepened. Naruko's gaze sharpened. Something was definitely wrong. Grandpa? Naruko called out, her voice echoing gently through the quiet cave. She walked further in and spotted her grandfather seated in his usual chair. But something didn't feel right. She couldn't sense the familiar, strong presence she was so used to. Grandpa? She tried again, her voice a little more urgent now. She gently shook his shoulder, hoping he would stir. No response. Please wake up, Grandpa. Naruko shook him again, her voice laced with rising concern. Though a part of her heart already understood the reality, she still held on to the hope that he would wake up and smile at her like always. Naruko slowly sank to her knees, her small hands trembling as tears welled in her eyes. And for the second time in her young life, she allowed herself to cry freely. She remained there, sitting quietly on the cool floor of the cave, thinking about the times they had spent together, moments filled with warmth, laughter, and guidance, the precious memories she would always carry with her. 6 months later. Tsunade smiled warmly as the young Uzumaki entered her office. Naruko always had a talent for choosing the right moment to appear. Today, there was no one else around. Happy 12th birthday, Naruko, Tsunade greeted kindly. Naruko stood a little straighter, her tone more serious than Tsunade remembered from the past. Thank you, Hokage-sama, she replied respectfully. So, what brings you here today? Tsunade asked, folding her hands casually. I want to take the graduation exam, Naruko said with clarity. Tsunade raised an eyebrow in pleasant surprise. Your timing is actually quite good. Your age group is scheduled for the exam in just 2 weeks. If you're willing to wait until then, you can take it with them. I can wait, Naruko said simply. Excellent, Tsunade smiled. I'll have my assistants prepare the necessary paperwork. You'll need to attend the final few weeks of instruction, and it'll be difficult to fit you in if you delay. Are you certain this is the path you want to take? Yes. I've waited long enough. Very well. Have a seat in the waiting area. Shizune will meet you shortly to help you fill out the forms. Shortly turned out to be 10 minutes, though it felt far longer to the eager girl. Uzumaki Naruko? Shizune called gently. Naruko stood up and walked over, relieved that the wait was over. Apologies for the delay, Shizune offered with a small smile. Things have been busy with the upcoming Jinan exams. There are several students from important families in this group, so we have to coordinate with their parents more than usual. Please write down your information here so we can register you in the academy system. Once you pass, you'll only need to have your photo taken, and then you'll be all set for assignment. Naruko glanced at the form thoughtfully. What does this part mean? She asked, pointing to the section labeled Stipend Mission Credit. That section is for students who don't have financial support from family. The village provides a stipend until you're eligible to earn through missions, Shizune explained kindly. That was reassuring. Naruko hadn't been able to save any money since Tsukimi Bakken had passed, and she was placed into a modest apartment. Every bit of money she earned went into her training and her basic needs. But she didn't mind. She would repay the village with her dedication and hard work. She was determined to succeed, no matter what. With focused resolve, Naruko signed where she needed to, her heart full of motivation. I'll make you proud, Grandpa, she thought silently, her eyes shining with quiet determination. Dear YouTube family. That concludes today's content, but the adventure continues. If you found value in this video, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to remain a part of the Anime Octopus community. Your continued support fuels this creative pursuit. Until we meet again, stay inquisitive, stay inspired. Thank you. Warm regards. Anime Octopus.